português, não é? Porque só portugueses, esta primeira peça foi, como este ano é o centenário do Carlos Paredes, decidi começar com, talvez, o tema mais conhecido do Carlos Paredes, que é os velhos anos. Apesar de não ser um tema tradicional de guitarra portuguesa de Lisboa, que é este instrumento tradicional de Coimbra, mas acho que o Carlos Paredes é transversal ao país todo, Coimbra, Lisboa e arredores. Portanto, primeiro Carlos Paredes e de seguida vamos tocar, mas não sei muito bem o que normalmente o que o André e eu fazemos é vamos tocando e vamos sentindo se vocês estão a gostar, a gente toca desses champos, se não estão, a gente muda de repertório. Portanto, é um bocadinho ao sabor do vento. Mas vamos tocar o repertório tradicional da guitarra portuguesa de Lisboa. Primeiro, agora vai ser um tema do Kari, sim. Seguido de outros logo vendo. E depois no final explica mais fácil. cavalinho, coisa com, não sei, 80 anos. O segundo tema foi Guitarras de Lisboa, do Manuel Marques, um guitarrista do Porto. E o terceiro tema, Vila Fiel, José Nunes, também um grande guitarrista, de Lisboa também. E por acaso não era das Beiras. Ficava em Lisboa. Acompanhou muitos anos a Amália Rodrigues. E agora, para terminar, não sei muito bem o que é. Coitadinha, a culpa não é da guitarra, eu é que estou muito pancada. E este tempo é terrível para as cordas novas. Se bem que a sala tem uma acústica fantástica. Desculpa lá.
so I'm present by myself. So I'm Kari Voutilainen. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy to see that faces and people, friends I already met. So thank you joining for this small presentation. So that what I would like to do is present what I've been doing during my career as an independent already some years before. So I started watchmaking. So I'm originally from Finland, and I started watchmaking 1983 when I went to the watchmaking school. But already before that, I was passionate from watches and also from all this handwork and that sort of things. So I will just put the small thing which shows a little bit where we are today, that my workshop has been developing a lot since I started. I started alone, and things have developed. So today, on the left side, we see our current workshop in which we are working. We have more than 40 watchmakers, or not watchmakers, but collaborators making watches. In the middle, there's one picture up which shows the atmosphere of the workshop. We are doing handwork. We are fabricating our components entirely in our workshop. But I will go further. So my journey starts, as I told, from Finland, and I was 2 times in Switzerland for the third year education in late 80s, and I started to work in Switzerland 1990. When I started, I had I was sitting aside of the watchmaker who was he was 70 years old, and he was pushing me a bit, but you should make a watch. And I started to make my first watch in 1990, and I completed this pocket watch during my evening time. So I was working during the daytime in Parmigiani in Fleurier, which was a very small company at that time. And then I spent my weekends and evenings creating this pocket watch entirely by hand, making all the components for it. And after that, of course, I get I met collectors and people like that, and I got my first order at that time. So always an evening time. So I was investing back I did repairs and restorations for the collectors, and I did deliver this first minute repeater. One customer asked me that make me a minute repeater. So I did find the ébauche movement from Le Coultre, and I did complete this wristwatch, which is quite unusual that we don't see that it's a minute repeater from the dial side, but it has a bezel which is made in the way that there's a small, like a cannelure, we call it in French, and you can grip it and turn it on the clockwise, and then by turning on the clockwise, we wind the striking mechanism, a small barrel, and we are releasing the striking mechanism, and then the watch is striking hours, quarters, and minutes. So that was one of the first watches for the customers. I did deliver that in 1996. And at that time I was always investing back to my workshop, so I bought tools and watches, and I did trade some stuff and creating my workshop. And then I had another customer who was willing to make or to have a special piece, and this one is quite interesting. That it's we call it a baby chronometer from Ulysse Nardin. It was an ébauche, which was never finished. So, and he asked that do something special for me, and what I did kept only the main plate and part of the barrel bridge on which we can see the label of the Ulysse Nardin and the number. All the rest is new, And I did create a tourbillon, which is doing one revolution in 7.5 minutes. And it has a very special escapement that we can see that that it's a large balance wheel, which is a Guillaume balance wheel. The Guillaume balance wheel is a balance wheel which is made for the certain configuration that we can have the best temperature compensation with that balance wheel. And then it has a constant force escapement. So there's two escape wheels top of each other, and there's two anchors. And it was Mr. Terria who did invent and even patent this mechanism. And you might know that Anthony Randall, who is a famous watchmaker from United Kingdom, so he's the son-in-law of Mr. Terria. So I asked Anthony that can I have because he had like a escapement model for it. So I asked Anthony that may I borrow that model. So I had already inspiration from his model for this escapement. And end of the day, it took me 4 years to make that piece, my evening time. And I did deliver that watch in 2000. In meantime, I made a lot of small repairs and restorations and that sort of things to get my workshop more complete. Then I made some restoration and very interesting watches, and I will show a couple of these. This is one of the most complicated pocket watch what has been made in Germany, in Glashütte. There was a Lange Schöne, for instance, a family Lange made watches, and then there was also another company called Union, like this one, which is presenting on the picture, and it's one of the most complicated pocket watch what has been made in Germany, which is Kranzonnerie, which is striking automatically hours, quarters, and every quarter. So we can have a choice that it's a silence, Kranzonnerie or Petit Sonnerie. So we had that sort of a mechanism inside. Then it had a perpetual calendar, which is always in time, which is automatically correcting leap years and different lengths of the months, and chronograph and split chronograph. So I did restoration of that sort of things when I started as an independent. Because when I started as an independent in 2002, I wanted to remain independent and not to have investors or partners. So I am independent. I don't have any partners. So I've been developing all that work and companies by myself with our work. There's another work, for instance, what I did, or my colleagues, we did together in my workshop. It's a pocket watch which is, it was started by Derek Pratt. He made a ébauche, what you can see on the left side. And in early 2000, Derek Pratt, he was getting sick and he was getting quite weak. And Peter Paumberger, who was the owner of the Open Jürgensen, asked Derek that if he don't mind that if I finish or complete this pocket watch. And he did accept, and it took us for more than 1 year to complete that work. So it's a very unusual form. It's an oval shape. It's a flying barrel. It's a flying tourbillon with a detent escapement. It's a spring detent, and as well it's a constant force. So it's quite complicated with power reserve indication and the thermometer. And so we had to fabricate parts, make it run, and all that stuff, including all the finishing work. And I was also asked to fabricate the case for it. So we did a platinum case for it. I did fabricate all these springs to open the case back. So it's a double case back, and then to find somebody to make a sapphire glass with oval shape. It was tricky because it's quite difficult to measure. So that was a challenge to get that. And this pocket watch was sold in last autumn in the Philips auction for 3 million Swiss francs. So that was a private owner. Unfortunately, it wasn't me. I wish, but that was the story of that watch. And when I started as an independent, I was first willing to make work by myself, making minute repeaters and complicated stuff. But I had customers asking that make something more simple and affordable. And I started with a model which is called Observatoire. I was using the Peso 260 movement. And we made something like 50 watches like that, 53 to be precise, with that movement. And that was in 2006 when I did present that in the Basel Fair, and I got a lot of orders and sort of success. And then I had to decide what to do, because I had so many orders that I was obliged to think that shall we start to make a lot of watches or refuse orders, and I did refuse orders. So since that, our production has been pretty stable, that all the time less than 75 watches. It has been between, at that time, perhaps 35, and then 40, 50, 70, 60. So, and I've been keeping those numbers relatively low. We have a demand, we could make much more, but I prefer to keep it limited. And that time I realized that when I started as independent, we must make our own movements, because by doing like that, it will create the workshop that we will remain independent by doing our own stuff. And that's what we did. So with 2008, we started a construction of our first movement, and we started to deliver 2011. But that was a time that was also the Longines ébauche, and with this Longines ébauche, it's very rare ébauche. They made 195 movements only for the chronometer purposes. And when there were crises, all these companies, they were not throwing away, but sort of cleaning up their factories, and a lot of movements, and they were disappeared or they were just thrown away. And then watchmakers, they were collecting them, and then they have been circulating between antique dealers. And I was lucky enough to collect something like 24 of those movements, and we make small series of these watches, which has a very unusual shape of the case, unusual shape of the dial, and we made only white gold and rose gold. So that was small series, and then at that time we started to do the construction of our own movement. But in the meanwhile, I made quite a lot of these minute repeaters, as that was my work when I was in Parmesan in the 90s. So I did unique pieces, minute repeaters, purple calendars, chronographs, split chronographs, and so on. And that's, for instance, one of the early ones we made. I made repeaters in the way that they are not striking quarters, but they are striking 10 minutes. So and I call them, it's a decimal minute repeater. So for instance, when it's a 1:11, it makes that one ding, ding dong, ding. So 1 10 minute plus 1. So for me it's more easier to calculate instead of a quarter repeater. When you have a 15, so I have 15 plus 3, but 15, it's 18. So I find more logical in that way. So we have been doing those repeaters in that way, that they are striking only 10 minutes. And then I did rebuild the depots, that I did create the GMT mechanism on it, which is created on top of the repeater mechanism, or it's mixed up in the middle. Also that very small, for instance, chronograph what we made in early 2006, 7, 8, 6 watches, chronograph monopusher. It was a Bosch from not Lemania but Valjoux, and quite very nice balanced movement. And then the monopusher, the pusher is on top of the crown. So we made small series like that. And then this is our first in-house movement. So we call it 28. So it comes from the word at 28, so 28. And I did skip the zeros in the middle so that we started a construction of this piece 2008. So it's a movement which is quite unusual in the way that it has a escapement which is inspired from the escapement what Breguet did invent. He called that the natural escapement. So in the movement there's two escape wheels which are on the same gear train as that everything is in the one row. So all the gears are turning in the same time, and the gear train and the escape wheels are giving the direct impulse to the balance wheel. And when I was in Parmigiani, I had a chance to restore one tourbillon made by Breguet, which was bearing this escapement, and it did run really well. Breguet had problems that he couldn't do that in series, so he made a couple of watches, but he was obliged to stop because he was ahead of his time. Great idea, but the technology wasn't ready for it. And what I did, so we made a construction of it, and we did realize that it has much more perform comparing the Swiss lever escapement, so we were obliged to recalculate the power of it, and that's why we have a one barrel, but we have a very long power reserve. And now, after years that we have been delivering these watches, we see that also the service interval is very long, because the escapement can run dry, and the small difference between the viscosity of the escapement oiling doesn't affect of the run of the watch. So still watches are delivered 2008, 2009, they are not still coming for the service. And then I started to make engine turning, or we started to do engine turning in my workshop at that time. So it was 2002, something like 20 years ago. No, not 2011, 10. So it makes 14, 15 years ago, when I was lucky enough to buy first engine turning machines, and these dials are already engine turned in my workshop. And at that time, the engine turning, so we did the engine turning with these antique machines, but we were obliged to get finishing work for the dials from the dial makers. And we had a problem with the dial makers, and then 2013, there was one company in my area which went to the bankrupt, and I was lucky enough to be able to buy that the company which was in bankrupt, so building and all the material which was inside. And we started to work, or restart to work, that company in 2014, and it's called Complement SA. So I was obliged to change the name and all that stuff because nothing to do with the past. And since that we have been doing our own dials entirely in our, not in our workshop, but which is next to our workshop, but which belongs to us. And that was exactly the model which was released in 2013, which was sort of the like an impulse for us to find the dial maker, because 2013 we did launch this series, 25 watches. I did sell off those watches during the Basel Fair, but I couldn't get dials delivered by our previous dial maker, and we have almost half a year without any dials and several months without any income because I didn't have any deliveries. And then, as I told, that this company went bankrupt, and suddenly all the puzzle came together, and we were able to get that. That was very unusual layout. We did in platinum, white gold, and rose gold case. And then power reserve indication at 2 o'clock with a sort of conical system. Also, one thing that if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. I mean, you can interrupt me and ask. I will answer with pleasure. We have been doing also a small series, very different things. For instance, tourbillons. We made 6 tourbillons like that, which has a very large tourbillon cage and a balance wheel. And this tourbillon was made also with our escapement, and that's why the hands are offset. So our minute hand, they are not in the center of the movement because of the cage, which needed more space. And also at the same time we made one unique tourbillon which was much more smaller, and the tourbillon cage was at 7 o'clock. And what we have been doing that time, there's a lot of watches which there's no pictures on the publicly, and we haven't done actually any communication as such. So I've been very discreet, and we have a lot of customers that they don't want to share what they have, and that's why we don't publish either. There's also one minute repeater which is very interesting in the way that it's also a unique piece. The small second hand is at 7 o'clock. Hour and minute hand, they are blue steel, and then there's a rose gold hand under our hand, which is between 12 and 3, and it's a power reserve hand. So it's an unusual construction that the power reserve hand is situated in the middle. Also, it's a rose gold case, but it's interesting in the way that it's a double back. We can open and have a look on the movement, and it has a very sophisticated decoration with the enamel work on back. So this particular customer was a very good friend of Finland, and he got all these honorary prizes from President of the Finland, and to celebrate that, he asked me that please do something which is related with the Finland. So I was thinking that let's put this that Finnish lion, which is emblem used in the official flag in the Finland. So normally we are not able to use this emblem, but he said, no, you can do it. It's nobody will bother you. So, and it's done in the way that there's a red enamel, and then there's a white gold and rose gold combined together. And in real life, it's really beautiful. And then there's a small picture where we can see all the components which are inside of the minute repeater. So there's more than 250 small components. So I put them on the table and took a picture, just to illustrate that how much stuff there's inside of the few square centimeter. So that's interesting to see, and once the movement's together, we don't really realize what's inside.
When you create a unique movement watch, do you start with the dial face, or do you take into concept how you want the movement to actually look, or do you start with a blueprint like we want it to be circular, we want it to have a chronograph, we want the basically look from all the edge like that. How do you go through that?
So Yeah, so once we are making a watch, it starts from the face, because it's important. I mean, then there's things that we must decide. So we must decide the diameter of the case. So let's say, okay, 38 millimeter, okay? So here we go. Then we must decide the opening of the dial, the bezel, inside diameter of the bezel. So it gives the space what we have, what we see. So of course then we are coming back to the case construction, that how we will fix the bezel. So then it will give the wideness of the bezel. And then afterwards what we are doing is, then you have opening, and then you must start to design that you have a balance on it. So hour hand, minute hand, small second or center second, and if there are complications of hands, and then you must start to do the layout. And that's, for me, it starts from there. And then you turn around and you start to work on movement. And then of course you are facing the compromises. Okay, you must you can't really do what you want to do, but at least you have some guidelines on that. So it's important to start, for me, to start on the face. And that's why, like on that watch, when you're looking at the small seconds, I think it's pretty much balanced. Sometimes you see watches that they are very close to the center. It means that you have a small movement, which is a large case. But I prefer that if we do something from scratch, that we are really putting an effort on the aesthetics first, and then we are doing the techniques which are following on the movement side. So that's what at least I'm trying to do. And then of course it's different if it's like we are small, I'm flexible, but then in the industrial way, when the production is very large, it's different story, because then it's also economical question.
And does the case ever change midway through as you're creating the movement? Like, do you think you want to create a different design to it out of glass back, and then you make the case more thicker or circular, or you change the material from gold to like white, silver, or?
Yeah, I mean, the case is more easier afterwards. Once you have when you have a movement and you have the opening of the face, you have a balanced dial, then the case it's not a detail, but then you can more easily work. And of course the movement size should have a relation with the case, that the movement, of course we want to make as large movement as possible, and then as large as movement as possible, it makes that we have more space, we have a more bigger barrel, we have more bigger balance wheel, more power on disposal, and more space to do things. So of course, and then the case thickness, of course, I mean, it's better to try to make the thickness of the case that it's not too thick, but also that the layout of the movement is balanced, and then the back it's easy afterwards, because we have everything set up. So then you do the open case back.
Does the movement ever change, but basically making the whole watch bigger or potentially smaller, depending on the size of the movement?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So yeah, I mean, and if it's a smaller movement, then we are facing the problem that or the smaller case, that you can't do smaller than that. And if it's a double back, and then if it's open, I mean, as we are doing open back today, so, but all these things are related. Everything is related together. So 30 millimeter movement, so you can't really make smaller watch than 36, 37 millimeter, because at least you need some space, some material for the case. That's also another watch which is a unique piece. It's a minute repeater with a purple calendar, unusual layout again. It's a unique piece what I made for the private customer, something like 2000 8 when I delivered that watch. It's a perpetual calendar which indicates date, moon phase, and the month, leap year, and also that as a perpetual calendar, it takes in account different length of the month as the leap years as well. And here the corrections are done by pushers. So we have correctors on the case band that we must correct with a tool. So pressing, so we are advancing all these functions one by one. Then again, we have a different type of things. What we have been doing, we have a lot of different type of things. So that, for instance, is a watch we call it GMR. So it has a power reserve indication at 12 o'clock, and at 6 o'clock we have a GMT function. And I like functions that if we can do the correction by crown, so like here there's no buttons, that we can adjust or advance the GMT to another time zone by pressing the crown down. So we just press against the case, something like 0.6 millimeter, the crown moves, and it makes jump the GMT hand. So once traveling, it's easy to set up. Just press crown down, and it's a sort of firm function that it doesn't move by himself, but it jumps. So you can't really make it move by accidentally, but you must really push it. We have been doing GMT functions also in different way. Like here we have a watch which is also quite sophisticated with double back and enamel work, and it has a GMT disc. So at 6 o'clock there's a small seconds, and then we can see this yellow and the blue part which are made from gold, and they are enamel on it. And here we have a disc which is rotating. So disc is indicating the GMT time. So yellow is a day and blue is a night time, and then there's a 12 in the middle of the yellow part, and then where hour and minute hand, there's not 60 seconds indicated, but there's a small triangle, and we are reading the GMT time from there. So that model we have been doing since all these years. I mean, quite a few watches doing every year, but all of them, they're unique pieces. And like here we have a very special engine turning that on the case back, it's a transparent enamel, it's a blue enamel with this optical illusion in the middle, and then also the optical illusion also on the dial side with it's a red transparent enamel, which is actually the most challenging engine turning patterns, that one person can spend 1 week only for the engine turning for that sort of pattern, because it's irregular and it's quite challenging to do. And so there's a lot of calculations and by hand, and they have to note how much they are moving the cross slide every time, and you make one mistake and it's done, you start again. And when it's enamel work, the dial is made from gold. We're using either rose gold or 23 or 22 karat gold or white gold, depending what it is. And then there's engine turning, and top of the engine turning there's the layer of the enamel. Like on the case back, it's a blue enamel and red enamel and then yellow and so on. That's completely different type of watch. It's our bandwidth movement, but it's decorated, but that decoration is done in Japan. And it's a Japanese lacquer art, so it's difficult to describe in few words. I could talk the whole evening for that, but all the colorful parts, they are piece of shells. Everything is yellow. It's a 24 karat gold, and we can't machine the shells. It's a piece of shells, or the shells which are coming from Australia and New Zealand. So these forms which are not flat, but they are like a sort of a shape, and every single piece of the shell it's filed by hand. They don't have any machines in the studio. It started in Japan. It was done in the Wajima town. Mr. Kitamura is considered as the best in his art, but they were, more than a year ago, they were obliged to move out from the town because there was that earthquake, and the Wajima town became a phantom town. So there's no more. The sea level rise 3 meters. There was a harbor. There's no more harbor, and half of the town did burn down. More than 30,000 people they had to leave the town. So Mr. Kitamura with his studio as well. So they moved to another town and they are starting to work again. But this is very impressive. And also the case back, that inside of the case back there is this dragonfly. And dragonfly is drinking water. And all the wings, it's one piece of shells. And it's cut into small pieces and put it together. And when you're looking at that in real life, you're really thinking that it's a real wing. But as a work, it's incredible. To do this work, it took almost 1 year for them.
Kari, could you tell us a little more about your design codes, your preference about round cases, small teardrop lines, Roman numerals? Could you tell us a little more about that?
The design style. I'm not a designer, but I have a quite. So why I've been using teardrop blacks and the design, because in my opinion the Scandinavian design is very clean. It's sort of practical, so it's combined with so I like these elegant forms. I like sleek forms, but I like also the forms that we can clean easily, we can polish easily. So I think also the future. And I'm using teardrop blacks because even there's small scratches, but you don't see them. You really must have a light that hits the scratch. And also the bezel has a small bump on the side, which is larger than the case band by himself. So we can put the watch on the side of the table, and it's that small edge which is touching, not the case band. And so it's protecting the case band also against the scratch. So there are small details like that, what I have been doing and thinking that it's practical, it's more easier to polish and to take care, and also that it looks fresh during many years. So they are the things what I have been thinking. So that's the reason. We are doing that sort of watches like this, 1-2 watches per year. So we are making these parts in our workshop, and all the base stuff, so from gold or titanium or silver, whatever, we are shipping them in Japan, and they are all bespoke stuff, that watches that customers are telling that I want to have something, and very often I'm asking the theme, that what you would like to have. I would like a sea, like the previous one. It's like a sea. It's like a sea, or it's like the wheat which is moving on the wind. So customers are giving like a theme. So we have different type of things what we have been doing. And this is also very interesting because Jiku, and it's a sort of explosion, and all the single these parts are filed by hand. There's a lot of them, and it's I don't know how much they did spend time, but it's months and months just to file those parts, and in life it looks incredible. And that's our new model. It's a world timer, and again that we are setting the time zones by pressing the crown down, and then they're moving all these discs and our hand. So by traveling, we just press the crown and we choose the town, and we are already in right time afterwards. It's also a unique piece. This model is very interesting in the way that I think nobody has done that before. We call it ISO. It's a watch which is, we must read the time different. Here we can't look the time just quickly looking, that we must read the time. Like here, it looks weird that our hand is not in the right position. The movement, it looks the same, but the gear train is different because it's running different speed. And I will show the small video of it. Actually, we didn't have any request on that, but somehow the crazy idea came, and we made something like 20 watches like this. So you really must read the time. I had one watch like that, but I was wearing for a while, but it was impossible to read the time when I was driving a car. Impossible. You just couldn't do it. You must look for a while to pick up what it is. So this was a small series, and we still had a request on that, but for us it's too difficult to do in the way, because it takes, as my workshop is small, and we have already quite a few calibers, and this one is so different because of the gear train and all these turning discs. So we decided to limit that series. But it was very, very interesting. But also, by wearing it, it was quite challenging to read the time. But there are customers, they love to have that. And it also that then you have to really work your brain every single time, that it's not instant, but you have to think about, okay, what it is, I must have a look and enjoy the watch. Then we have been doing different type of things, like, as there was that one watch with the world time, it's the same, but different type of case shape. We made a small limited series of that watch. And then, as we saw in the beginning, this pocket watch, so we decided to make a wristwatch which is inspiration of that in tourbillon. What we are doing now, or we are delivering now, it has an aesthetical inspiration from the movement. It looks almost the same, and the dial has the same inspiration. It has the same type of a case. It's a coin-edge case, and we are making 20 watches of each material, rose, white, and platinum. It's a 40 millimeter watch, and it has a really the same type of inspiration. One more watch, it's we had also customers who they have been asking that it would be love to see the movement, and one customer from Thailand has been asking for many years that make something. I want to see the movement and get rid of the dial. And I told that if I get rid of the dial, there's nothing to see. It's only main plate. And then one day we decided, okay, let's flip around the movement and do the reversed one. And that's what we did. So we had one first series which was limited, and we had too much requests, and we are doing with that new mood what we are using for the world timer. So we are using that base for that watch. So it's quite unusual look that when you're looking you see the movement, but the hands are put it on the movement side. So there's an extra gear train to bring the hands the indication on the movement side. But it has an unusual look, but it looks quite nice in the way that when it's very three-dimensional. And then of course we can have a choice for the colors, that we can do the movement color in yellow gold or rose gold, black gold as here, or we can leave it a natural German silver. So we can have a different type, and as we are doing dials, we can do dials in any color as we have been doing. So that's about for the watches. I could.
Let me ask one.
Yes.
To have a tourbillon in a pocket watch makes a lot of sense, but to have in a wristwatch doesn't make so much sense. For example, June now launched a vertical tourbillon.
I would put it in this way, that because the tourbillon, when it's turning, the gauge is turning, so it's eliminating those theoretical and practical running. I mean the timing differences in 1 minute or whatever is done, and if it's done in the way that the construction is properly done, because sometimes when people are doing, it can be that because there's more gears, that if there's a technical problems, it's not necessarily better than the watch without tourbillon. But if it's really well made, it is, really good. It makes sense. But then it's the construction by himself, because you have extra gears and also the gear, we call it fixed wheel. So everything has to be properly lined, that the transmission between the escape wheel, which is turning around this fixed wheel, the ratio is the distance remains the same, which means that the gauges, the fabrication is properly done. So that's important, for instance. But in my opinion, if it's properly made, it's good. But coming back to the tourbillons, because tourbillons until computers, there were less than 1,000 tourbillons made in the whole history of the 200 years almost. And spark erosion has changed the world in the way which enables to fabricate different way, because before we were obliged to make the tourbillon gauge and then do the heat treatment. And the heat treatment, always the metal is living, it's moving, and it was a challenge to do that work. And that's why there's so little tourbillons, the pocket watch tourbillons made in the past. And today it's possible to work in different way. And that's why we have a much more watches which has a tourbillon. So that's a small difference. And then in the past they were very often used for the chronometer competitions and precision purposes and so on. So it's a...
Thank you.
Then our work has changed. As I told, I was lucky enough to buy this first engine running machine 2010, And then things has developed, and we had quite a few. And now it makes a couple of years ago, we were lucky enough to buy one company called Brodbeck. So it's a gentleman called Georges Brodbeck, who is his 70s, and he wanted to find somebody to follow up or to continue his art. And so he was willing to sell his company to us, and that we did. And also we were lucky enough to buy one other building in Fleurier, which was an old watchmaking school building, which has been renovated. And we have that workshop over there. Now we have more than 30 machines, all kind of, and that's what I will explain a bit. So the engine turning by himself, that it's like a hand guilloché decoration, so it's engraving which is done with the machines. And for instance, those Fabergé eggs, so the eggs they are made from gold, for instance, and then they are engine turned, and then there's enamel work on it. And then I will show that there's a different type of lathes. We have different type of decorations and how they work, and the company. So let's start. So the decoration that they have been decorations which has been done in the past, already in the 15th century, that birth of the guilloché decoration. And then there are discussion where the name comes, if it's art, who has been it come from Italy or whatever, but it's like that, and the engine turning is done operated by hand, and then there's a cutting tool which is cutting the metal, and in principle that the cutting tool remains still, it doesn't move, but it's a piece which is moving. And then the different, I mean, also that what is supposed to be that the engine turning, that hand engraving, it was very difficult to do symmetrical designs, and that's why it's assumed that they were creating the machines to do symmetrical designs. And 18th century, those machines, they were getting more mechanical, and then Breguet was one of the first one to use engine turning on his dials. And then it was also in 19th century that it was sort of useful, because it was used only like a decorative art, but in something like 18 something in United Kingdom, in England, they were doing those tools to print money to prevent the counterfeits. So they were doing designs with engine turning machines, and so that was perhaps the only time when it was sort of useful. Otherwise it has been only used for the decorative art, like watch dials and jewelry and so on. And then perhaps on the history that in 19th century it was used, I mean, like a Fabergé and so on. But then when the time goes further, like in 1900 and then when industrialization came, then things has changed, that more and more things are done by machine, by stamping. So then engine turning machines were used like to do this tooling for the stamping. And then all kind of like all these small things when we are like a sport games, and there's decoration of case backs, they were doing with the engine turning machines, but they were using different type of machine called machine à tapisserie, which was perhaps more quicker, because they are tapisserie it's a different type of work, same type of machine but operated differently, and it's more like a copy machine instead of one line by after another. So Fabergé, he was they were made in Russia, and they were doing, for instance, these eggs like an Easter present, and those are beautiful. That the shapes, that they are all decorated. There's enamel on it, and under enamel there's either hand engraving or engine turning on it. And already at that time they were doing very sophisticated pieces, and Tsar, he was supporting a lot of art. So I mean all the paintings, but also that sort of things. And unfortunately, after revolution, it was finished. I mean the Tsar, but as well that art. So Fabergé it did continue, but that type of art was more or less finished. And then we have a different type of machines that where the machines are coming from. So England, Georges Plante, they're one of the most old fabricant of the machines, as well the Holz-Zapfel. And then there were companies in Switzerland, Lienhard and Gudel, but all these companies they are closed down because of the demand of the machine. I mean, in 70s, when there was watch crisis, they started to come. There was no more demand on that, and the demand was decreasing all the time because of the industrialization. That more and more things were stamped; they were no more done by hand, and the machines were used to do these stamping tools. And there were companies also in Germany making machines. There's also companies in the United States, different type of things. And it's interesting to see that, for instance, Plante, technically, they're using the tin for the bearings, which sounds very weird. All the other machines, they are bronze bearings. But English ones, they're using tin. And it works as well. But the principles are the same. English machines, they have English threads, so they are not the same thread on the screws as Swiss or German machines. And then, Pforzheim, it became sort of a center of the guillochage because of the history. And Pforzheim was also interesting in the way that it's an area in Germany which is we call it Black Forest, and it's sort of in the whole town. It's in the hole. It's not necessarily very attractive. It's surrounded by forest, and sort of bottom of the whole town, and then it was the history that it became because they started to bring people in to work from countryside during the winters, like in Switzerland. And then there were more and more that industry for the goldsmith, for the jewelry, but also for the engine turning. An interesting thing that in Pforzheim there was a school that it was possible to learn engine turning, but it was also the only school that it was possible to do the like an engine turning master. So like in Switzerland there's never been a school for it, but Germany has been the only place that it has been really the school that you can learn as an engine turning as a profession, which is a recognized profession, and then even the master degree on it. And then also how it's described that hand guilloché is traditional decorative technique used to create intricate and repetitive patterns on metal surfaces commonly applied in luxury watchmaking, jewelry, and fine objects. The decorant requires highly skilled artisans and antique traditional machines called rose engine or straight line engine. And the machines are different. Rose engine, or we call it engine turning lathe. So we do everything which is circular. It's like a lathe. And the straight line, but we are doing only the straight line. But also on the straight line we can do zigzag, but not round things. So there's a small video on the So that's a quite quick video for the. So there are cams, and then the head of the lathe it's moving according to the cam, because there's a touch piece, and the graver it's cutting it remains still, and to obtain the regular decoration, I mean the person who is doing that must have the same pressure against the tool which is cutting the metal. There are some pictures that perhaps I will. So, go this side. So, the person who is operating, he's using the handle, and then there's like a leather wire which is turning the head because of there's pulley underneath, and then turning the head. Afterwards, here the cams, and then there's a touch piece which is in other side. There's this piece in both, I mean on the side and the back, and those are the springs. So it's a tension spring which is pushing or pulling the head against the touch piece, which is it's a sort of polished steel part, and then the cam has a form, and of course the whole head is moving afterwards. And then the piece, it's fixed here on the head, and here at the bottom the whole head is pivoted here. It's between the points. Once we are removing this tension of the springs, the head is completely free. It's very free. There's no friction because it's sharp points, and then those tension springs, it's gently pulling these cams against that tension spring. And then once we are doing the operation, so it's a game between the cams and the touch piece, and then we have here the small, it's like on the lathe that we have a cross slide. So here we have a micrometric screw, and then by moving here, and then there is a setup that there's a teeth, and then we can move, for instance, 3 teeth or how many teeth we want, and it makes that the cross slide is advancing, and that makes the distance between the lines when we are cutting. The depth of when we are doing the engine turning, the depth of the groove is something like 3/400 of the millimeter. It's very small, it's not deep. And then of course depending the wideness of the distance between 2 lines. And then the cross slide, there's 2 ways to do that. We can have a micrometric screw against like a stop, that we can adjust the depth of the graver, or then we can have another piece aside of the cutting tool which is touching the piece what we are doing. So there's 2 options how we will set up the depth of the groove. And then the cross slide can be moved sideways. So we are able to do round surfaces or concave shape. So it's possible. We can do in both ways, round or concave. So it doesn't have to necessarily flat. But once we are doing, for instance, dials, it's important that the piece by himself it's flat on the surface. If it's not flat, or if it's not parallel, so then afterwards it might be that we call it there are flat parts on the decoration, and have to do it again the whole surface. So that's why it's important that everything is flat, and that to obtain the good result in one go. Engine turning, in my opinion, there's three different things. That it starts from the tools. That we have to have a cutting tool which cuts, and we have the right angles. And the cutting tool is very delicate to do because the tip is very thin, and angles must be very precise. And because it might be that the tip worns out during the operation, and we have to redo the graver. So we have to achieve to do exactly the same angles, because you can see with the naked eye that something wrong. So you must have exactly the same angles all the time. So that's why we must have settings that we go, and we have always the same angle and same sharpening for the gravers. The cutting tool must be very sharp, and that's why you're using that sort of settings and all these diamond discs to obtain the very high polish on the surface, more better polish, more better surface on the dial or on the object what we are working on. So on the straight line, so the Rose engine, it's those round cams, and the straight line, we have that sort of piece which is fixed on the picture is not very good, but here on the side, and the head, it goes only down. So once we are working, so we go down, and the cutting tool is cutting, which is fixed here, it's cutting the metal. But the head can move sideways, because there's a tension spring on the side, which is pushing the head against the cam. So there's a touch piece and the cam, and we can have a decoration according to the shape of the cam. Like here, there's a very large one. It's almost straight, there's small waves, and different type of grooves. And then it's a game between the touch piece and this cam, how it's moving. So we have been doing sometimes cams for the customers when they have been asking the special shape, so that can be done today easily. Easily, but as we have like a CNC machine, so we can more easily program and imagine what we are doing. And then we have machines which are, we call it tapestry, which is also engine turning, but it's a machine which has like a form. So it's preferable, it's a bronze piece, and then it's an engine turning machine, but it has a pantograph behind. And it can be hand operated or it can be machine operated. We can have a small engine as we have been doing. And then once the machine is running, automatically it makes the copy of the design, but in the scale, so we can have a make this perhaps 10 times or 20 times smaller, or even the same size. I mean, as a pantograph, we can make it smaller. And then the advance of it, that we can do also circular parts. We can do like this Fabergé X. We can do spheric forms, half round, or even the ball. And these tapestry machines are getting rare. So they are getting rare because there's almost nobody who can set up these machines. And Mr. Brodbeck is one of the only one who knows how to set up. And the advance of that is also that we can make grooves. So we can make the grooves which are something like 0.25 deep, and so we can have a 3D effect on it, and then we can also use the creativity and start to fill up with enamel and colors and so on when we are working with these. Then there's a couple of images of our premises, like a left one, that's the building what we have been renovating in Fleurier. So it has been more than 2 years now, and now it's getting ready, that we have 3 floors. We are occupying 1 floor with these machines, and then one part of the first floor where we have a mechanical workshop to making parts and renovating and updating these machines. And then we have been doing setup that we have electricity on the floor and big windows and nice light inside. So that's a little bit our setup over there. Personally, I like challenges. Life is more interesting when it's like that, when there's some challenges going on, instead of it's very smooth and. So thank you very much for your attention.